And that is the latest ABC News.
On this edition of One Plus One, living the Hollywood dream with Jackie Weaver, lessons from an aid worker in Africa and diffusing violence in the USA. Hello, I'm Jane Hutchin. Welcome to the program. Valerie Browning is an Australian nurse who's spent more than 35 years working in the Horn of Africa. She has controversial views on fashions in international aid after decades working with the nomadic Afar people in northern Ethiopia. There are about 1.3 million Afar who raise animals in the desert and move with the seasons. It's a region where death can come suddenly and hunger depends on rainfall, which has been scant in recent years. Valerie Browning, welcome to One Plus One.
Many, many thanks. It's great to be here.
You've been going to the Horn of Africa, particularly Ethiopia, for almost 40 years. What was it that first drew you to the region?
I had a friend who somehow responded to an appeal for Australian medical workers, and she jumped in with all fours, as it were, and I thought totally blindly, and I thought I was going to be her big mentor, her big helper. And yeah, that was 1973, 74, when there was massive famine in the Horn of Africa.
You eventually settled in areas where the nomadic people, the Afar, lived. What particularly was it about the Afar that attracted you?
Nothing at all. I married an Afar. I knew nothing of the Afar except what I've learnt through being married in the last 23 years. I was in Eritrea, I was in Sudan, I was a bit of a Horn of Africa nomad. Met my husband in 86, married him in 89, now I'm with the Afar.
I want to talk to you in particular about famine, which is something you've experienced over many years. Why is it that so many of the world's people have plenty to eat, and yet that doesn't get to people like the Afar?
It's the essence of what we know of as poverty. Most people think poverty is what you're talking about, famine. It's not. It's disempowerment, not having the ability to run your own agenda, to run your own life, and to gain what every human being needs: food, water, shelter, good health.
Why are they disempowered?
Well, if I take the position of the Afar, they're not literate. They have run their own life through thousands of years in that area as nomads and done extremely well up until the last decade and a half, I would say. And the situation is that basically, nobody particularly wants them in the Horn of Africa because they're pastoralists, they're nomadic, they live a lifestyle which is difficult to govern, to control, and they are living on very, very valuable land. It's volcanic, it's minerals, it's got a waterway running through it. It is also in the most strategic piece of the Horn of Africa, being right next to the Middle East.
In your view, do you feel that the West is interested in what happens to people like the Afar?
Big question, Jane. I think so, but only fleetingly and maybe superficially to fit the first world's agenda. Basically, there is this extraordinary polarization of the way we live between the world I can't live in and the world here, or the world in the States or Europe. And this polarization is increasing all the time. I mean, you upgrade your iPods and your goodness knows what's each year. This is amazing to me. And you have no limit of what you want in development. what you want in actual comfort for your lifestyle.
Because, for example, more than 25 years ago, there was the massive Make Poverty History. There was the Live Aid concert, which was all about raising funds for famine victims in Africa. More recently, we've had Make Poverty History. I mean, the world does get together and mobilise when there are tragedies. Is this enough?
It's certainly never enough, because it's not the Band-Aid we want. The society wants to have the power itself to develop and to get a hand on their own health, their own education, their own infrastructure and so on, and their own development. But this is not happening.
But who's stopping them from achieving this?
The overriding world agenda, I think.
Can I blame the rest of the world if I don't achieve something, or if my immediate society doesn't achieve something?
Well, we have to look at planet Earth as a whole. It's one globe. And you can't shift off the African continent or take away some of those South American countries. You can't do that. I mean, we've got all these grand statements like the World Food Programme saying there's enough food in the world to feed everybody, but the problem in distribution. Well, for heaven's sake, organise the distribution. In 2009, World Food Programme cut food aid to Ethiopia by 30% because they said they couldn't buy up grain in Brazil because it was all sold to the United States for ethanol fuel. I mean, what's going on?
What about aid dollars? A lot of organisations, including your own, seeks aid dollars from governments all over the world. How tied to specific examples? For example, I understand that HIV/AIDS now is probably a fashion, if you like, amongst aid organisations. Do you find that you have to tailor your needs to what the international fashion in aid is about?
Absolutely. We had to stop a primary health program because the back donor happened to be the British government. They had switched from primary health to exactly what you said, to funding HIV and AIDS. And so we had to go to the local community and say, no more talking about malaria, no more talking about washing hands with soap to stop diarrhea. We're only talking about safe sexual practice. And they said, well, look, I'm sorry, we can't do that. They couldn't bend that way and just talk every day about condoms and not talk about the fact that they've got people dying of malaria.
What about issues such as female genital mutilation? You mentioned that in your book, that it is prevalent in the area where you work. How has the prevalence changed in the time that you've been there, and how much has that been due to outside influences, if you like?
Well, in the terms of female genital mutilation, nothing will happen from outside influence, absolutely nothing. This is an intimate, internal issue of the society. It's literally between your legs. So, I mean, sorry, nobody's going to change it. So we have been working through the traditional leadership, particularly through the Islamic leadership, because in the Quran, FGM is actually not supported at all. So they in their illiteracy don't know their religion. So we help them by getting them to discuss. We've made films about it. We have a film where in fact a community asked us to film them because they said they were proud of doing FGM. Then we showed it back to that community again, and most of them fainted on the floor, and they immediately stopped because it just showed, I mean, these poor little girls screaming madly.
So have you been able to reduce the prevalence of it?
It is reducing dramatically in the hands of the community. To stop it in 2 minutes or to talk about stopping it in the year 2015 to suit the Millennium Development Goals is a load of nonsense. You know, everything should be in the hand of the community, in the hand of the people who are developing.
When you come back to Australia, and I understand that your daughter is being educated here, what do you feel about Australian society?
I love Australia because I can talk to people like you. You are a talking nation, and that's great.
But does the privilege here upset you?
I've learnt to live with it. When I first came here, I nearly died. I nearly died. I went into a supermarket. Actually, the first time it had ever happened to me, I landed in my sister's house, just got off the plane. She cooked a beautiful meal for us, and then she turned around and said, I forgot to buy the bread. So I said very glibly, I'll go and get it for you, having seen a shop as we drove into her house. And so I rushed to the shop, and then I stood there. I thought, oh my God, I never asked her what sort of bread. And there was lines of it, different sorts of breads. I mean, with us, bread is bread, milk is milk.
So what's the problem with having so much choice?
It's ridiculous. I mean, I live a peaceful life. I don't have choice. I mean, you're forever inventing a new toothpaste. It's nutty. I mean, yeah, I'm very satisfied with what I have, and I live a very, very healthy life, extremely healthy life, and I have all I want. And I've learned through the years, and it's been a hard learning curve, that actual possessions is not what makes life tick or make you smile either. I mean, Australians think I'm crazy. I don't have a credit card, I don't have an insurance, no. But I mean, they say, what about retirement? Well, retirement isn't a word in the Afar language. And aside from that, we live together. I mean, when my mother was dying, the Afar put together and got the ticket for me to fly back here.
Your husband is a Muslim. He's a member of the Afar. For you, what you do on a daily basis, what is it that drives you? Is it faith, because you are a religious person?
I'm a Christian, he's a Muslim. We respect one another very well. I mean, he knows, he would be upset if I was not reading the Bible and praying. I'm the only Christian that I know of around, right? So, and the Afar all over respect me. We discuss at great lengths. I mean, the Muslims will say to me, how do you pray, by the way? You don't wash yourself before you pray. Why? And so we'll go into all that. And that's good. I don't mind that. In Afar, you can never be alone. There's no such thing as my own space, my own time. You're always surrounded by people. You've always got chitter-chatter going on. And if you look pretty gloomy, somebody will turn up the music, somebody will start cracking jokes, somebody else will, they're great people. It's very, very, very hard to find a depressed Afar. There aren't any.
You've seen a lot of bad things, hard things, children dying, poverty, famine. Do you ever get despondent?
No, because of what you've just talked about, because I believe that the end answer is in the hand of God. If it was in my hand, well, it's pretty useless. If God's in charge, then I've got every possible hope for the Afar themselves. And so, I can live on, although in a week I may have to deal with directly 3, 2, 1 person having died, and these may be children, they may be women, they may be very young people. But that's what I'm very sad about here. You don't know how to deal with death. You've no idea.
Why does that sadden you?
Because that's life. Life and death sit together you can't separate the two.
But don't we eventually get to know death?
Well, you have to by force, but you try to avoid it. You try to run from it, which is mad. Somebody was saying to me the other day, they talk in Australia about people passing away. They can't say he has died because it's too painful for them. But it's the reality. And I look forward to dying, actually, because it's a rest, isn't it?
We don't want to lose you. Val Browning, thank you so much for speaking with One Plus One.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a real pleasure.
It's one of the things that sets the US apart from Australia. The Constitution